Hello and welcome to today's webinar, How to Make Telecommuting Work for You, offered by the Oregon State University Alumni Association in partnership with Oregon State's Professional and Continuing Education Unit. I'm Greg Aronoff, the Marketing and Communications Manager here with PACE, and I'm joined by Yuliya Dennis, who is from the Alumni Association, and we also have Lydia Mills from McKesson Specialty Health. Welcome and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
So before we get started, I'm going to share our agenda for the day. So I work for Professional and Continuing Ed, which is the non-credit arm of the university. We partner with colleges across campus to offer open enrollment classes to the public on subjects ranging from professional development to gardening to beer making. We're always excited to continue our partnership with Yuliya Dennis from the Alumni Association. And I'm sure some of you have joined some of our other webinars on the career series. So we're excited to have Yuliya and Lydia here to talk about how to maximize telecommuting. And without further ado, I'm going to hand it off.
Thank you, Greg. It's always really great to partner with you for these career series webinars. And we presented on all kinds of different topics, and I'm looking forward to introducing this one. I do think it's very relevant to the workforce today, and more people are talking about it, so we wanted to provide a resource to our alumni about how to ask for telecommuting and how to make it work for you. So I'm Yuliya Dennis, and I'm the Director for Alumni Career Programs here at Oregon State University's Alumni Association. And I oversee our career programs, and that ranges from offering one-on-one support to resources, events, webinars, volunteering, etc. And if you have a career goal, including how to ask for telecommuting, you can always reach out to me. I'm always glad to help people out with whatever kind of goals they have. And so don't hesitate to use me as a resource for any kind of career goals that you have. And I'm excited to have Lydia here. So Lydia and I have known each other for a little while now, and I'm really happy that she is here to share her knowledge with you about how to make telecommuting work. So I'm going to turn it over to Lydia, who's going to introduce herself.
Hi, thank you, Yuliya, and thank you everyone for having me today. I'm excited to talk about telecommuting. As she said, I work with McKesson Specialty Health, and I've been working in this role a little over a year and telecommuting from this position. And prior to that, I was working, well, I'm a proud OSU alumni, and I got my master's from Portland State in social work. And so I was working in the medical field in hospitals and outpatient oncology clinics for a majority of the time. And I recently took this position. So I'm not in the clinic, but I'm still working in the health field, but it allows me to work remotely in Portland, Oregon. So thank you.
Thank you, Lydia. And I'm going to share a little bit about our Alumni Career Services, just so that everyone's familiar with them. So again, it's a program that I oversee, and we provide all kinds of assistance to people, whether it be job searching or whether it's any kind of transitions, including things like returning to work or having your schedule change or negotiating things with your employer. We're here to provide resources to our alumni community. And I think it's a really fantastic set of programs that we offer. And so I recommend that you do utilize them and take advantage of the things that we have to offer. So this webinar is going to be recorded, and an email will be sent to you with the link. And feel free to ask questions throughout in the chat box, and then questions will be addressed throughout the webinar. And we'll be sure to address some of the questions that you asked when you signed up as well. So what we'll cover today, we're going to look at how to ask for telecommuting, look at some different options for structuring work, and then how to achieve some work goals. And before we move forward, we had two poll questions that we're going to ask you, and Greg's going to pull those up and then give us the response. So the first question is, do you currently telecommute? And so Greg's going to pull that up for us here in a moment. So go ahead and submit your response.
All right, as the answers come in, it looks like yes, part-time is winning. And they're flip-flopping, so now it looks like no. No is the clear winner, with yes, full-time is the minority.
Okay, great. Well, you've come to the right place then to learn how to ask for it. And then the second question is, do you want to telecommute? So especially for those who said, the majority who said they don't currently. So do you want to telecommute? Go ahead and submit your responses.
All right, 100%. Yes.
Okay, awesome. Well, we will make sure that you get information for how to do that. So I'm going to talk a little bit about telecommuting in general, and it's definitely growing and it's easier than ever. And within the next 10 years, about 50% of the workplace will likely be telecommuting. And I've seen this trend for a while now where we see more and more people, whether it be just like once a week or I know some people do like every other Friday, but there is a growing demand for a desire and flexibility in scheduling. And I think our technology really allows for that to happen. And there's also financial reasons why telecommuting works. So especially for companies, it can save a lot of money in like office space, and for people who are driving in, it saves on like gas and time to come to work. And I recently was traveling in the California area where traffic is really tough, and so saving some of that traffic time can be a big thing for both the employer and or for the commuter, and also it ultimately can help like the environment and other community factors when there's less people trying to get to work in the mornings and coming back in the evening. So there's a variety of reasons why telecommuting is a good thing to do. And I'm going to turn it over to Lydia now. She'll talk more about definitions and options and things like that.
All right. So telecommuting is working from home either by or in a remote location, either by telephone, email, internet, and so we just wanted to make sure that people had a full understanding of that. And there's different, we call it where I'm working remote, you're working remote. Some people call it telecommuting, some people call it working from home. There's a variety of different definitions, but basically you're at home or you're not in an office setting. And so just to give you a little bit, I thought I'd give you a little background of how I got to the position I am right now. Like I said, I had been working in face-to-face contact with patients either in hospitals or outpatient oncology settings for many years. And I'd actually seen Yuliya's, one of her emails come through about if you're thinking about doing something different with your career. So she and I met, and it was really very helpful because I'd only had this medical inpatient, outpatient, face-to-face patient setting, and she was able to help me take some of my skill set and pull that out to say, no, look at all these other things you could be doing, which really helped me get to the position I am today, where I'm working with McKesson Specialty Health in a remote position. So I work on a team that my home office is based in Houston, and I'm able to work remotely from Portland, as I mentioned. There's actually only 2 on my team that are in the office in Houston. The rest of us are remotely. And I think I'm very fortunate in that I work for a company that really supports remote employees. So thousands of us, it's a worldwide company, work telecommuting. So it really was set up for that. And so I was fortunate in that way. But not everyone has that option. And so we'll talk about that today. And my home base is in Texas. However, for some people, they work remotely, even though their office is maybe not that far. And so we'll talk about that as well, just kind of how to maybe ask for that so that you're not having to drive into the office every day. And so in putting this together today, I'm basing it off of my own experiences, some reading I've done, but I reached out to my coworkers, my colleagues who have been doing this for a while too, to say, okay, tell me what you think about the telecommuting and what is that like for you? So so I had some input from them as well. So we'll go through some of the benefits first. And I think for some people, a benefit could also be a drawback and vice versa. So it really depends on the person. However, I think one of the biggest benefits people talk about when they're telecommuting is the flexibility in your schedule and your time. And you can really set up your schedules throughout the day however you want in most situations easier to take time off for appointments. If you're sick, you don't really have to call in sick. You don't have to use your PTO for those things. You can work whenever and wherever you want, ideally. There have been times, especially last summer, where I was able to take a long weekend and I was able to log in on Thursday and Friday, and I didn't have to take PTO for that. And then I had my weekend to finish because we went out of town. Today, actually, I'm calling in from Houston, Texas, because I'm in a meeting. So I've been able to work remotely. So really, you can be anywhere and work anytime you want, which for some could be a drawback as well. I tend to start earlier in my day because all of my colleagues are on Central Time or East Coast Time. So I log in, on the West Coast about 7 a.m. and I can usually end my day fairly early just because of that, the way my coworkers' schedules are. It also, can help if you have children at home and you need to be able to pick them up or run errands for them. So you can really kind of structure your day, however that best fits for you. And definitely savings on the financial, sorry.
Lydia, I wanted to do a really quick poll question before we go through more of the benefits.
Oh, sure.
And so we'll just pause briefly, do a poll question, then we'll return back to the benefits.
Okay, sure.
So the poll question is, why do you want to telecommute? So obviously Lydia's going over some of the benefits and she'll do a little bit more of that. But we are curious from the audience what your thoughts are on why you want to telecommute. And so go ahead and put your responses in.
All right, as the answers come in there across the board, looks like flexibility for family or personal reasons is leading with concentrate better and other. So 0 for work better and health reasons.
Great. Thank you. So Lydia, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you. Thanks everyone for responding to those poll questions.
Yeah, yes, I will. Yeah, so flexibility, we just talked about. Definitely there are some benefits with the flexibility in your scheduling, able to be home with the family, especially in the summertime. If you have kids, you can be home for them. And as we're talking about savings for financial and time, there is a savings there. I know a lot of my colleagues have been able to save on childcare costs or after school costs because they're able to be home and the kids, they can be home with their children. But you also save money on your car, gas, repairs for your car, just the time it takes to commute. You don't always need a professional wardrobe. You don't have to dress up every day. So there's savings there, savings on dry cleaning. So there's a variety of ways in which you can find savings for finances and time when you're working remotely. And the concentration someone mentioned, definitely fewer distractions. I find I'm very much able to focus more because you don't have people coming in, trying to stop by your office and just trying to have a conversation with you or asking you a quick question that turns into a very long conversation. So when you need to sit down and do something, you're really able to sit down and focus and get that work done. And then organization, it really, I found being home forces you to be organized. You have to manage your time. It would be very easy to just say, well, I'm going to sit on the couch and watch some Netflix and jump into work a couple hours later, but you can't. You really have to be disciplined and stay on time so that you still get your work done. And so I think my time management is actually better because I don't have all these distractions and I'm able to get done what I want. And I think these all really contribute to the job satisfaction, especially in a company that supports the telecommuting. And something that just came up in the last few days for me that I was thinking as a benefit is one of my colleagues had to move for family reasons, but she was still able to keep her position with McKesson because she works remotely. So having some of that flexibility to be able, again, to work whenever, wherever is helpful. And I think, too, from a manager's perspective, I'm looking to hire right now to fill a position, and it really opens up the job pool, the resource pool, because I can look for someone, if they don't have to be based in Houston, Texas, I can look for someone around the country. So it really does open up that talent pool. Any questions or comments about the benefits?
Looks like there's no additional questions submitted right now. Before we move on to the next part, which is on drawbacks, we want to do another poll question and ask, what are your perceived drawbacks of telecommuting? We just talked about the benefits, but we're also curious what people think as the downsides to telecommute. So go ahead and answer the poll question.
All right, the answers are coming in. It looks like social isolation is number one, followed by not motivated to get as much done.
Great, thank you for sending those responses. I think it'll be pretty well in line with what Lydia shares. And Lydia, I really appreciate you sharing your personal sense of like what it has meant for you for your time management and distractions and stuff. And so I'm excited for you to share more about the drawback side of things too, as you had now a lot of experience with telecommuting. So we'll turn it over to Lydia for the drawback side.
Okay. I think one, and my colleagues agree with this, is that you tend to work longer hours and you don't even often realize it. So I get up try to log in by about 7, and a lot, like I mentioned, a lot of my team members are on Central and East Coast time. However, I still have people that I'm working with on the West Coast. So when I could be done at 3 or 4, I still have people working till 5 or 6 on the West Coast. So you don't often realize that you're working longer hours. And it's a little bit harder to shut down for the day because your computer, your work is always there. So it can be very easy to just, oh, I'm just going to go back really quick and check my email and then get sucked into something, or I'll just add a couple more lines to this presentation I'm doing and then get kind of sucked back into it as well. And because the calls, because you're working remotely, you're on the phone a lot. Well, at least in my position, I'm on the phone a lot. So these phone calls take up a large portion of my day, but then I still have work to do when I'm done at the end of the day. So that can definitely lead to working longer hours without even necessarily realizing it. And feelings of the isolation, the social isolation, I know that that's a concern for a lot of people because you're not in the office, you're not connecting with your coworkers, your manager, your supervisor. There's a lot of ways to connect that we're connecting now when I'm working. So personally, I haven't felt that a whole lot, I think because of the phone calls that I have so much. But I know some of my colleagues have really struggled with that. And so when they're done working, you know, really have to make an effort to get out and to socialize or to reach out to your colleagues throughout the day so that you're not feeling so isolated. So there is an adjustment to that. This was a huge drawback for me and an adjustment, sitting at the desk all day. I'd gone from a clinic that was 3 stories with lots of stairs, and I was up and down and walking back and forth. And because you're working and you're at a computer most of the day, you find yourself sitting. So some people may already be in that position, but for me it was an adjustment, definitely being less active. So I'm having to add that into my day to make sure that I get up and move around so that I'm not just sitting. And the travel, so I travel probably 25 to 30%, not a whole lot. For some people, it depends on your position and your company, you may not travel at all. But I know it can wear on some people to be traveling in the airports, dealing with flights, staying in a hotel, depending on your family situation as well, that might be hard for some people and gets a little tiring. But on the other side, you get to see places that maybe you wouldn't get to see before. So again, like I said, some of the benefits can be drawbacks, and vice versa, the drawbacks can be benefits depending on the situation. So any questions about any of these drawbacks?
Any questions?
Okay.
Great. No questions. Okay. Yeah, no questions yet, Lydia. Thank you.
So I was thinking about this, and I was thinking, I think you definitely have to have a certain personality and some skills within your personality to be able to do this work. Because I think some people think, well, I don't really want to interact with people. I think I'll be able to work from home. It'll be great. I don't have to interact with people, talk to people. But actually, I don't know that would be the best job for that personality type, because this position really kind of forces you to get out and talk to people. You have to have strong communication skills. You have to be able to reach out to people. Otherwise, you're not going to get anything done. And so I think having that personality where you're going to take charge of that and reach out to people, not afraid to make phone calls, not afraid to communicate on a webinar or video chat is pretty strong, a strong skill set to have. And you definitely have to have good self-management, time management. You have to be a self-starter. Again, like I said, it'd be really easy to just sit on the couch and not want to get up. You want to watch TV or Netflix, but you really have to, for that time management and to be able to get things done. I think someone said they weren't as motivated to get things done. And so you have to be that kind of self-starter that's going to get up and start your day and get things done, because you're still held accountable for projects and deadlines. It's just you're not in that office. So you're still expected to meet these goals for your company. And I think you need to be comfortable making decisions, because there's no one really to just walk down the hall or walk to the office next door and ask them, hey, what should I do about this? So you have to know your bandwidth. You know, what can you do? What can you do? What can't you do? What kind of decisions are you able to make? Because often you just have to make those on the fly, which I think comes with a lot of positions, but I've noticed that a lot more telecommuting, because like I said, there's no one really to go down and ask. And being flexible, I think, is huge. That's not up here, but technology doesn't always work. And so you just kind of have to be flexible. And, you know, maybe you're doing a webinar and your slides aren't going to come up because something's wrong with the webinar, but you can still talk. And so being able to just kind of go with the flow, I think, is an important trait. And because you're not always able to see people's nonverbal communication skills when you're talking to them face to face, there's some flexibility in there, and just kind of being able to just establish that rapport over the telephone, which I think goes along with those strong communication skills.
Thank you, Lydia. That was really helpful. And I think that from working with you, I can totally see how you definitely demonstrate those skills. And you're doing great with this webinar, especially being in Texas. And yeah, I think you're doing very, very well. And then we have two questions here that Greg's going to ask from the audience.
Okay.
For Greg.
Yep.
Sure.
The first question is the level of expectations for amount of work completed the same whether remote or in-house?
You know what? I think it's the same. And it might depend on the position, but the couple colleagues I have that are actually working at the home office, their expectations are the same as mine. So at least in my role and in my situation, it's definitely the same. We all work hard, but we also have a lot of fun. So I definitely think the expectations are the same. Maybe a little higher because they know that you've got they think maybe there's some extra time that you have because you're not commuting, but I think it's more that it's just about the same, yeah.
Okay, great. And the second question, how do I stay personally connected with staff in the office?
Yeah, so I think, we make an effort to have regular, frequent check-ins with our coworkers. So there's some weekly one-on-ones. We have monthly team calls. We do quarterly in-person. And then just in general, like I said, because we're not able to meet in person, we have a lot of WebEx telephone calls. Sometimes they're video calls, and we're able to communicate that way. We also have Skype for Business, so we can send instant messages to each other. And I think if you're a people leader and you have people working for you, it's really important to make that effort to reach out to your employees and say, hey, how are things going? Do you need anything from me? Whether that's via email or the instant messaging. We instant message each other even if we know we're on a phone call, because you can usually respond pretty quickly. So just, again, you have to make that effort to stay in communication, but it does work. Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much, Lydia. And then next, Lydia is going to share some tips for successful telecommuting. So Lydia, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you.
All right. So you definitely need to get up and pretend you're going to the office every day. Again, I think everyone I've talked to, there's a few people who say, oh no, I can stay in my sweats all day. But I think the majority of people I talk to, you have to have the mindset that you're getting up and going to the office. So get up, take a shower, do your hair, shave, put on makeup, whatever that is, just because you're kind of in that professional state of mind. plus, you never know when somebody's going to say, hey, can you jump on the video? I need to chat with you. So at least from the waist up, you need to look professional. And so not only for those reasons, but it just seems to put you in that frame of mind. And then try to keep your work area or your office really separate from the rest of the house. Again, because that feeling of, you know, working too much, it's really easy to go back to that. But I think it's really important to separate your home life and your personal life, just like you did when you were going into the office. You want to be able to shut that door and leave it behind you if you can. And so being able to separate that and getting up, moving around, taking breaks. Like I said, the other thing I would say is make sure that your friends and your family know your office hours. Set office hours, you know, that you're going to work 8 to 5 or whatever it may be, so that you don't have just friends dropping by saying, hey, let's go for lunch now that you're working from home. I know my mom for a while, because I was working from home, was calling me all the time during the day. I had to say, Mom, can you wait? I'm working. Maybe call me after 3, 4 o'clock. So you definitely have to set some boundaries with family and friends. And I think too, part of this, because, you know, you were asking how do you stay in touch with people, because we do a lot of phone calls, we go from call to call to call, and it can be very easy to get very businesslike with all of this virtual. So I know when I'm having a call with people, I try to spend a couple minutes just kind of chit-chatting and seeing how people are doing. Because if you were in an office, you might get to the meeting room, and as you're waiting for people to trickle in, you're having small talk and laughing and talking about your weekend. So building some of that into your day, especially if you're communicating with people via phone, it just kind of allows for some of that communication, so there's less feelings of isolation, and you're getting to know your coworkers. I even have some teams that do virtual happy hours, where they will get on a video call and do virtual happy hours at the end of the day. I haven't done that yet because everyone I know is mostly on the East Coast, and it'd be a really early happy hour for me, but it's a fun idea.
So Lydia, we have a question that was submitted earlier that Greg's going to go ahead and ask.
Yeah, it seems timely. It's how do you effectively lead a team meeting when you are telecommuting?
Well, some of that I think I mentioned. I like to set the tone for the meeting by, like I said, kind of having some small talk and communication. A lot of what we do, we put together slides, PowerPoint slides, so that people have something to follow as we're talking, so that we're not just talking to a blank screen as we're looking. We use WebEx a lot, which is a program that helps us have conference calls. We can also add video calls to that. So sometimes we do have video calls. And so that way you can see people, but just again, being engaging. And if the group is small enough, I try to have people stay off of mute just so they can chime in and try to have that conversation. And it takes a little bit of getting used to, I definitely would say, but once you've been doing it for a while and you realize this is the way we're going to be communicating with each other, I think we all get used to it. And again, just having those frequent conversations and setting an agenda just like you would if you were in person having a meeting.
Great, thank you so much for that. And then next, Lydia's going to talk about home office needs and how to set that up for success.
Yeah, so I think anything that you might have in a desk if you were to be at work, anything you could think of, a filing cabinet, a computer, it's really helpful to have more than one monitor, because you can have your WebEx going up on one side, and then you can have any files or running programs on the other monitor. And so I was set up with a laptop, a docking station, 2 monitors, keyboard, mouse, a headset, which I don't use a lot, and then a cell phone. But I think, you can bring in whatever you want, filing cabinets, just making sure. You might want a desk that raises up. I think that's really helpful, so you don't have to feel like you're sitting all day. So they make various renditions of a desk or part of a desk that raises up. Having strong security for your IT, from IT. So in most professions, there's some sort of confidential information, whether maybe it's financial, For us, it's PHI, protected health information about patients, because I'm still working in an oncology setting with different practices. So you really need to make sure that you talk with IT and have a strong security for that, so that it protects that confidential information and you're not breaching any confidentiality. And I think different ways to connect virtually. So I mentioned we do WebEx a lot, which is a conference call. I know there's others out there. There's Zoom and Global Meet, but we also do Skype for Business. So we can actually do a video chat through Skype, or we can just instant message each other. You can share your screen a lot. So we'll be on the phone and then we can share our computer screens with each other and see what we're working on. We've set up Microsoft Teams. So there's just a variety of ways, and I think that helps keep you connected so that you're not feeling isolated by being able to have these conversations or these ways to interact. And the video calls are nice to be able to see each other. So having a camera, I think, on your computer is going to be a definite need for that.
Thank you, Lydia.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Go for it. Yep. Do you have more things to add to this? I was going to jump in with a poll question.
I was just going to say, having like a strong internet connection, Wi-Fi, and making sure your cell phone, you have good cell phone reception, or you may need a landline, because that is part of that technology piece. So that's important to kind of check out and see what your situation is at home.
Yeah, thank you for sharing all of that. And I was just thinking back to how you and I prepared for this webinar, and everything we did was through a video call, through email, through sharing documents. And so I was just thinking how so much of even just my own work is already virtual as it is. And so it seems like the jump isn't as big as one would think, based on how we already probably naturally work in our work anyway.
Yes, yeah.
So we're gonna do one more poll question before we move on to the next slide, which is how to ask for telecommuting. And the poll question is, have you ever asked for telecommuting? And I'm very curious to see how many of you have tried this before, and would love to then follow that up with tips on how to do it and how to make an effective case for yourself.
All right, as the answers come in, right now, yes is the majority winner, with no and I never wanted to, and then no but I wanted to. So 0 for yes and it was denied. So it's kind of interesting that yes and it was granted is the winner, and then no's are a close second.
Okay, yeah, very, very interesting. So I'll turn it over to Lydia now for the how to ask for it. It sounds like lots of people now have experience with that.
Yeah. So I think one of the things to think about is, if it's think about your position and really think about, is it feasible? I mean, is this something that you could realistically ask for? Depending on what you're doing, like Yuliya said, there's a lot of things already that people do remotely, I think, that you don't need to be in an office to do. But if you're in a position where you're interacting with customers or patients, day to day, it may be a little harder for you to ask to telecommute. But I think, so giving some thought to that, how realistic it is. I think you could draft up a proposal to your employer and consider, try to think about what are some of the benefits that you could bring to this. Think about what your employer may bring up as barriers and how are you going to address those. And then on the flip side, say, well, what are some of those benefits? They may think they're not going to be able to reach you, but yes, and they're worried about how much work you're going to get done, but you can say, yes, but I know I'll be available, and think about the amount of work I can get done without being interrupted. I'm working with someone in a medical practice, and she was able to work one day at home just to get caught up on all her medical charting. And so, think about, are you wanting to work at home full time? Do you want to work at home just a couple days a week? Maybe there's a trial period. So think about that and put that in a proposal. Think about what technology items you're going to need. Maybe you're going to want to have, some of the things we talked about. Does your employer already have a way to communicate via webinar or video chat? Will you need some of those things? Just laying all of that out. And I think negotiating expenses along with this, For example, with my setup, our agreement is they provide all of the technological tools, but the internet service is on my own, any extra office supplies are on my own. And I'm okay with that, but I also have friends who work for other employers, and they get their internet paid for, they get a lot of their office supplies paid for. So I think you need to think about what you can do or what you think your employer might do and write that into a proposal. And I think also, and think about travel, you know, how is that going to be paid for, mileage, those things, if you have to go into the office. And then how can you assure your employer that you're going to be available and productive? Because they may ask that, you know, again, how do I know you're going to be productive? So maybe it's a trial period and you're meeting your deadlines and you can show that you're available when they have questions or they need something from you. Hopefully they'll see that the benefit of how much you're actually getting done because you're there uninterrupted and you're able to work and get things done without people dropping by, telephone calls and all of that, stopping or holding you up. Any questions around this?
It looks like there's no additional questions. We did have someone ask something in the survey or in the registration, and so Greg's going to go ahead and follow up on that one.
Yeah. So the question is, how do you still have an influence on department issues when you're telecommuting?
I'm sorry. Can you repeat that? How do I have a?
Sure. How do you have an influence over department issues or an influence over your team when you're telecommuting and you're not there physically in person?
Yeah. So again, I think having that, again, because you're not in person, you're not seeing the body language. Sometimes you're on video, but you're not always that. So it goes back to having that personality type a little bit, I think, to be able to voice your opinions, to voice your thoughts, not be afraid to speak up when you're on a call. If you are doing video, you can look at body language that way. But I also think there's times and opportunity because you're working on projects, you're able to do some research, you're able to still present that in a way to your colleagues and to those above you, just to show all the work that you have been doing. So in some ways it's similar in that you might prepare to show something to your boss in the office, but you now are just doing it over the phone. But that's why I said we use a lot of PowerPoint presentations to get our points across and to show things that way. But like I said, just definitely being willing to chime in and volunteer for things and play an active role in your team is very helpful.
That's great. Thank you so much, Lydia. And now we're ready for the summary part of the presentation. So I'll turn it over to Lydia for the summary.
Yeah. So I think in general, telecommuting can be really great for the right person, the right personality type, and the right type of work, especially if your employer supports it. So I have found it to be great for me. It's worked out very well for my home situation with kids at home and the type of work I'm doing. It's a good balance because I can work from home, but I also go into the office at times or visit practices. So I'm able to still interact with people. It's a little bit of both. I think you really need to find that work-life balance because, like I said, you want to shut your office off, shut your work down at the end of the day. There's some people who want to work from home and telecommute because they get burned out in their other position. But I think you could easily get burned out at home by working too much. So really making sure you find that work-life balance and taking time to do things outside of work so you're not caught up in work all the time. And I think regardless, you need to expect an adjustment period. Everyone I've spoken to, if you've been in an office going in, working 40 hours a week or 32 hours a week, you're driving, it's a lot different to just wake up and say, oh, I don't have to drive anywhere. Well, I guess I'll log in. And just to adjust to that in the quiet in the home, people not coming in and even though it could be a benefit to be able to get your work done, there is an adjustment period. But I found that for me, it worked very well. And for most of my colleagues, we've all settled in and, it works very well. And like I said, we keep in touch quite a bit throughout the day. If you have a question or anything, somebody's always available. And I make myself available to those who report to me. So it works out nicely. But overall, it's great for the right person, I think.
And Lydia, we did have one more question, and it is there a way to demonstrate that work has occurred via technology? So is there a software that monitors work, or a report, or any kind of technology to show that you're sort of clocked in and doing your work?
Fortunately, my employer does not do that. To be honest, I don't know if there is technology out there like that, although I haven't heard of it, at least in people that I know that work for other companies. But, you can tell if you're logged into the computer. We have Office 365, and it's got a little icon next to your name. And so with that icon, it's red if you're busy, green if you're available, and yellow if you've been away for a while. So I think if somebody wanted to check up on you, they could. But we don't have anything like that monitors what we're doing. The expectation is you have a deadline and you'll meet that deadline. I guess however you get that done, whether you take a week to do it or the night before, as long as you're producing the results that they're wanting to see, then they assume you're getting your work done and being productive.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Lydia. Lydia, any other thoughts that you'd want to leave people with regarding just your experience with telecommuting, or any last advice that you have?
No, I think, like I said, it's worked out very well for me. Finding that work-life balance is important, and finding ways to engage with whether it's with your colleagues, your coworkers, or making sure you make time outside of work at the end of the day to still interact with people, even outside your family. Just making sure that you keep those social activities up so that you're not feeling the isolation.
Thank you so much. It's really great advice. And thank you, Lydia, for sharing your tips and advice with all of us today. And your time is really, truly appreciated. And also thank you, Greg, for the administrative part for the webinar and keeping us going smoothly. So to start wrapping us up, I'm going to outline some next steps. So I encourage all of you, if you're OSU alumni, students, or faculty or staff, you can join our OSU Beaver Careers LinkedIn group. And then you can message me a takeaway from the webinar, and you'll be entered to win a free career consultation. So we've done this for every webinar, and we've always had winners for that. And then I just want to reiterate again that if you do want to have if you want to propose doing telecommuting, or if you have a specific career goal, you can always reach out to me, and I can assist you with drafting something, or talking, or creating a plan for yourself, etc. So always happy to serve as a resource. And then our next webinar is going to be on Thursday, June 13th. I encourage you to join for that. The topic is how to set boundaries and achieve work-life balance. And I think that the webinar today has been also a nice touch point for that, with like telecommuting and how do you achieve that. And we're going to have someone who has a typical standard sort of in the office job, and then we do have someone who works from home to share how they achieve work-life balance. And I think that Lydia really hit on an important point, where how do you achieve that when your work is at home? And we'll definitely be covering more on that during that webinar. And then you can always follow up with me. So like I said, I'm glad to be a resource for you anytime that you have questions. And I love helping alumni with whatever it is that they need help with career-wise. It looks like, do we have another question, or anything else, Greg, that?
The question is, would you say one of the takeaways is the tendency to work longer hours? Basically, are you working longer hours? It sounds like.
Okay. Yeah. So, Lydia, do you want to respond to that question about is the tendency to work longer hours when you're telecommuting?
Sure. To be honest, for me, I found myself in my other job working longer hours also. So then I would just get home later because I still had to commute. So am I working longer hours? Potentially, but I think I was before, to be honest. I do know that I have found myself working a couple weekends, but part of that is because I've ended my day earlier during the week because I've had something else I've wanted to do. So it goes back to that being flexible with your schedule. So I haven't really added up the hours per se, but I think I was working extra hours before. So I appreciate having the flexibility in my scheduling, so I haven't really thought too much about it. But I am mindful of it. I try to be mindful of it for sure.
Great, thank you, Lydia. And then I will turn it over to Greg to do some wrap-up announcements.
Okay, thank you so much, Yuliya and Lydia. That was great. And I did want to provide some more information to our audience. I talked a little bit about professional and continuing education here at OSU. And the reason we like to partner with the Alumni Association and hear from our alumni is because we're often able to connect with the very widespread OSU network throughout not only the state of Oregon, but the US and beyond. And we can provide educational opportunities for personal enrichment and professional development. And each program we offer is designed for working professionals with convenient online classes and year-round start dates. We also offer customizable team training. And again, I would like to thank Yuliya and Lydia. We really appreciate having you here. And this was great. And you delivered a ton of great content. And that will wrap it up. So thank you so much, everyone. And we look forward to seeing you on the next webinar.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you, Lydia.